Star Trek will not be presented tonight, so that we may bring you the following special program. Star Trek will not be...
Word. Come on. Come on. Jesus Christ. Folks, if you can see me, I should be able to see myself momentarily. Right now, my computer is being a bit persnickety. So hopefully you will see me. And if not, we'll start shortly. Jesus Christ. There we go. All right, now I see me. And there we go. Now I'm talking. How are you, everybody? There we go. Sorry, everybody. I'm having massive technical difficulties. It shouldn't impede the interview, though. It's Word Balloon. It's John Suntress. It's brought to you by The Legend of Kingdom Come. The Kickstarter campaign for Alex Ross's documentary is underway. Please check out Kickstarter, and it's a great documentary. I've seen the whole thing. Alex Ross telling his story about Kingdom Come, but really about his whole career. Let's see, Mark Waid is in it as well, of course, the co-creator of Kingdom Come, and a lot of great creators, too. Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Connor, Julian Shauna Benson, Brian Polito, to name a few. Todd McFarlane's even in it. So it's really, really great. If you want to pre-order the DVD or the digital copy, you can do that by going to Kickstarter, search for The Legend of Kingdom Come. Anyway, again, you'll forgive this kind of intro, but at least I know the cameras are working, and I'm happy to welcome my buddy who we know from great things as the co-creator of iZombie and wonderful work in the BPRD universe. He's also done great work for DC over the years, and he's got a new BPRD thing coming up at the beginning of 25. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris Roberson. Chris, good to see you, buddy. Welcome back to Word Balloon.
Glad to be here.
I wish I had better technical things going on, but at least I can see you, and I know we're rocking. Yeah, we're rocking, so we're all right.
A couple of tin cans of string, it's all you need.
As you know, that's my logo.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by all the devices, and I got the can with the string right there. Absolutely, man, because that's the most reliable thing. God, I don't know if it happened in Portland. Verizon was out for like 8.5 hours today for many major cities.
I saw that. We've got AT&T, so we were still up and running, but I saw lots of my friends were down.
It was the weirdest thing because unless you looked online, it's like, well, it's got to be my phone. Something's wrong with my phone.
Yeah.
Well, very weird. Anyway, but enough of that. Well, you got a few things a few irons in the fire.
Yeah.
And one thing that people can watch now on Max is an episode of Batwheels from the second season. And, it's a great, fun kid show. I think everyone can tell from the image and everything. It's a Cars Batman mashup, essentially. And how did you get the gig?
That show is way better than it has any right to be. I mean, just on the premise alone, it's like, well, okay, sure. And then it's just charming and
it's funny.
Really fun and funny.
Yeah.
Fantastic music. Allison Baker, the other half of Monkey Brain Inc., as you know, is buddies with a guy named Mike Stern because they are Mets fans. They bonded over the Mets, so they talk a lot. Well, he works in animation, and he told her, I think even before it was on the air, that he was going to be the showrunner on this new Batwheel show. And I think it had been announced, but nothing had really come out. And I'm a huge fan of just animation in general, but particularly kids animation. Like even before I was a parent, like I just enjoy watching kids animated shows. And it's something that I've always been interested in trying, professionally trying to write for it. So she put us in touch, and one thing led to another, and he was generous enough to take someone for completely outside that medium and give me a shot, and was patient enough with me to let me do that. So that's how that happened.
It turned out great, man. It's funny. I think, and I appreciate what you're saying about modern kids animation, because as you know, in our childhood, by this time, at least for me, because I know I'm older than you, I was, high school, college age, animation sucked because all the parent groups are like, well, it needs to have a lesson. And it's like, we had a local puppet show host who's like, They get 8 hours a day of lesson at school, and we just have fun. And
Well,
I mean, and he lasted a really long time until the parent groups. I mean, nobody drove him out, other than he's like, it's not fun anymore. So I'm
Yeah.
really glad since the '90s and now the modern day and stuff. It's like, oh my God, I mean, all that great Cartoon Network stuff in the past,
Yeah.
Dexter's Lab, Eddie and Eddie and everything, all good stuff. And really, like you said, no, I think a lot of the Lego animation stuff is good, and no, I think Batwheels is funny, and I think you did a great job with your episode.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely, there was kind of a steep learning curve for me, because learning how a thing is made, as a fan of animation and knowing how it works, I didn't have as much of a grasp on just the nuts and bolts procedural, like how you get from the idea to the script.
Sure.
And I was approaching it very much like you do in comics, where the script is a conversation you're having with the artist, right? Whereas in animation, it's more like I needed to have a presentation piece for them to put in front of an executive before an artist ever sees it, right? The executives have to sign off on it. So it was very much more like, I've got to make this ready for an audience to understand what's going on. Then I can talk to the artist, kind of thing.
So did you get someone to draw your idea along with your pitch?
It's not that so much as it is like when I'm writing a comic script, I'm describing to the artist, this is how I imagine you're going to do it, right?
Sure.
And with my first approaches at trying to outline and do the script was very much along those lines. Like I'm talking to the animators how I envision it looking, as opposed to I've got to explain how this story is going to work. Why is it funny? How is it going to function? And they're also, because it needs to have some sort of educational component to it, at least. So like, what's it about? What's it for? What's the young? Because it's a preschool show, they bake in. There's got to be some sort of like lesson that the audience could learn while watching it, in addition to it being funny. So,
well, and again, I liken it in the best way to the better Lego shorts and films that are out there. And was that in your mind as you were trying to kind of get the chatter and patter of those kinds of animated things?
I mean, I'm sure that's in the mix because I've watched all those things and I watch them all on a regular basis. I mean, probably what was biggest in my head is I almost religiously watch an episode of PBS's Arthur every day to cool down at the end of the day because I missed watching it with my kid when he was little. So a few years ago, I started doing that. Like, I'll have a drink in the evening and put on an episode of Arthur, like just relax. And that's kind of the age range. Like those kids are like the lower end of that is kind of the age range of the audience that we're talking to. So I was like, okay, what would those kids want to see on a show if they were going to watch it? So
that's cool. And again, these are, I mean, you can tell everybody from the image. I'll bring it back up once again. All the Bat wheels certainly take the personas of the Bat family. And if you can see in the right there, because it's kind of one of the smaller vehicles, that's Nightwing. And,
actually, no, that's
pardon me.
That's Batgirl's bike that you're seeing.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah,
Shame on me. Hold on. Let me bring that back up.
So Nightwing,
hopefully, or not.
Yeah, I don't think Nightbike is in this shot. He's a guest character. He's not one of the main core guys, because Nightwing occasionally drops by and visits the Batcave.
Well, sure.
And the conceit is that through happenstance, the computers in all the vehicles have attained sentience, but they don't want to they never do it when there's humans around. Only when it's just
they're in their group.
Vehicles.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a Toy Story thing. Like the second the heroes leave the room, the vehicles wake up and start talking to each other, but they're fully cognizant of what's going on. And like so. One of the fun things to play around with was, so the protagonist of my episode is Nightwing's bike. So he's got this kind of bravado and braggadocio. He's always relating anecdotes about how cool Nightwing is.
Yeah, and also the Nightwing bike and the Batgirl bike go after the Penguin.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Which I did specifically because my kid's favorite Batman character is Penguin. So I have to structure the story around the Penguin in some way.
I'm really glad that I don't even know how to say your name. I'm assuming the last one is shipping. Yeah, Anka shipping lover. The Bat wheels are awesome. Yeah, I agree, man. No, it's cool. No, I really honestly, because at first when I heard about Bat wheels, I'm like, all right. Whatever. But no, I'm dude, I'm so glad. It's much like and this is the truth. when Fraction, it was like, hey, Fraction's doing a Godzilla TV show, and I'm like, okay, because I got to be honest, man, I love the classics, but I don't know, the legendary films just don't speak to me, the modern films. But Monarch was great. So it's like, hey, all right, Chris is doing an episode of a show. And then I watch it, like, hey, this is really good. Much like Matt with Monarch. I'm like, hey, this is really good.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, that's terrific. Is there an opportunity? Because they've posted the whole season of season 2, right? Mm-hmm. Is that it? I know sometimes with animation, it can be a finite thing. And
I don't have any. I know the production wrapped. I think that all of the episodes that were made have aired at this point. Don't quote me on that, because there may be some that have yet to air. But I think that this season is it. I think.
Well, I remember, Jeff Parker used to work in animation. Mm-hmm. He was like the first guy to really kind of school me on how modern animation works. And a lot of times it's just 2 seasons. And they're like, all right, that's enough. And then, they move on to the next thing. I mean, God, we were spoiled with the Batman animated series and the various Justice League animated series over the years.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, no, that's normal. So, that's hilarious. Shipping Lover is back and says, if we could see it, there it is. But I'll admit, the Legion of Zoom and the Gotham Guardians are awesome, too. No reason to leave them out. Very funny.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Hilarious. All right. Eventually, that comment will disappear because, again, my computer is running slow. I think, folks, honestly, to keep it low tech, I'm just going to try and read off the chat and not put stuff on the screen anymore because we're having issues. But anyway, there we go. Man, so that's great. I hope maybe, Mike Stern, is that the showrunner?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hopefully Mike, whatever his next thing is, I hope he taps you for something new, man.
Yeah. Or him or anybody else. I'm available. I'm affordable.
Well, and also, I mean, here, let's shift to, and by the way, everybody, I should say, and I will do my best to see if these will work, but, we could talk about the new stuff. But if you want to play the hits, like, of course, sure. We could talk about Fables and Cinderella and the run that Chris had on that. We could talk about iZombie as well. And we can talk about BPRD, which I do want to talk about next. Wait, someone is asking. This is interesting. Shipping Lover says, do you think that Snowy will have a redemption arc Sunday? He may be a Zoomer, but he's proven to be a good friend of the Batwheels.
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't have any inside information on that. I know early in the process, what was really fun was I started working on my script well before the show started airing. So I got just stacks and stacks of scripts and rough animatics and stuff. So it's really interesting to see a bunch of those come together. And so it really informed like how I approached it, because I saw, okay, this is how they're going to develop these characters. To be honest, I thought that character had a redemption arc built in from the first time that it's an enemy truck that there's a nice kind of there's an episode where I can't remember the truck's name. I'm a fake fan. The Bat truck pal around together. And at one point I did play around with using some of those characters, but there wasn't room for them. But yeah, I don't know. But I agree.
Well, if this show were to continue or not would depend on the sales of the toys. And
I don't know.
And Chris, I was just talking about this with Declan Shalvey a week ago because he had never heard the phrase toyetic. And I've been schooled and I now know. And it's so funny. I mean, even as you likely know, the new design that Nick Dragata has for Absolute Batman, and that big chunky bat emblem and the fact that he's this giant weightlifter and stuff. And it's like, why'd they change him so much? And it's like, to sell toys. Yeah. That is a toy waiting to happen.
Yep.
So, yeah. So anyway, well, let's talk about something we can anticipate soon. I saw the solicits for it on Dark Horse, and that's you've got a new BPRD arc, and you're working with our buddy Mike Oming.
I am indeed. And I think technically it's set in that world. It's not going to have... It's not a BPRD book, but it's a book that has a bunch of BPRD people in it, if that makes sense. Like it is, the main character is Susan Zhang, who's a BPRD agent in the 50s and 60s. And Hellboy is one of the supporting characters, along with the Ghost Monkey Kid, who we've seen a couple of times. That's not his actual name, but that's how he's referred to in almost every script he appears in. Victor Kessler, who's appeared, I think, in like 2 brief glimpses of the future, because we haven't yet caught up to him as an adult. He was introduced to a little story that Mike Mignola and I came up with. It was drawn by Patrick Reynolds years ago. And when we introduced this little kid who could produce an ectoplasmic monkey, we were like, you know what? We could have him just show up as an adult later, and that'd be a fun adult character to have. Anyway, but yeah, it focuses on primarily, there's been a long-running subplot where we've hinted that this BPRD agent, Susan Zhang, who's Chinese-American, her family has ties to a Chinese secret society going back millennia called the Golden Crane Society that was kind of like the imperial Chinese version of a BPRD. Like, they knew about the supernatural, and it was their job to deal with it, to make sure it didn't, like, interfere with the lives of the people of China. And we've seen glimpses of them here and there. They've appeared in flashbacks and references in different places. Most recently, I think in Hellboy, the Silver Lantern Club, there was one of the monster fighting Victorian adventurers was a Chinese lady who was a member of the Golden Crane Society. But we had been teasing these things for such a long time, and it was like, we're never going to get to this unless we find a place to just do it. Like continuing to tease this story out through miniseries over the course of more than 10 years now.
Wow.
It's not going to work. We got to just cut to the chase and do it. So we hit upon the idea of taking the subplot out and then just making it the plot. So it is a 4-issue series. Each issue is a mystery that Susan Zhang and Hellboy and Victor Kessler are investigating in 1963. And then embedded in each of those is a standalone story set at different points in Chinese history with various supernatural menaces that ultimately all fold together to be one big story.
That's awesome, man. I love that you've been such a big part of the Hellboy BPRD universe and have had so many great arcs and everything. So when you pitch this, well, obviously, again, you've planted the scenes all along and everything. But is it just Mike? Is there an editor that really is kind of running Hellboy and BPRD for Mike? Yeah. How does that work at Dark Horse?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, so yeah, it's largely what catches Mike's interest. Katie O'Brien is our editor at Dark Horse. So she kind of rides herd on all of it. And Misha Gear is her assistant editor, or assistant to the editor, assistant editor, editor's assistant. I'm not sure of the actual title. Misha, she's awesome. So yeah, like it's a little bit different for each project, but this one came out of, I just kind of sent over a list of 4 or 5 capsule ideas. Like, here's stuff that would be fun to do. And it just so happened that right around that time, and I don't want to put words in Mike Oeming's mouth, but I'll try to paraphrase him a little bit. He was, I think, just before his 50th birthday or right around his 50th birthday, but he was trying to think about what he wanted to do more of or do next. And I think the way he's told the story is that he remembered how much fun he'd had working on Hellboy stuff in the past, and that he wanted to do more of that. So he had reached out to, I think, Katie and Mike at around the same time that I was putting this idea in front of them, that he wanted to do more stuff in that world. And then, so Oeming was suggested to me, is, what do you think about Oeming drawing this book? And I was like, that'd be fantastic. Like, I could totally see him doing all these different interesting settings and doing really visual, distinct stuff with each of them. Because one of the fun parts of it, and also kind of the challenges, is because every issue is effectively a standalone with an entirely different cast of characters in an entirely different time and place.
Cool.
You got to hit the ground running. You've only got so many pages. And so then he was on board, and then, yeah, just off to the races. I think he's about to start drawing issue 4.
Oh, great.
We're pretty far along, yeah.
Yeah, and I do know that, Dark Horse says that if people remember their old commercials, Paul Masson, they'll serve no comic before it's time. So Yeah. And there's I like to work pretty far in advance because I like to get paid. Like, so the second there's a contract in hand, I start turning in issues. And then Dark Horse does like to work fairly far in advance. And then I think that we're still
we're still playing catch up a little bit over some delays related to COVID and various other things that kind of sidelined a number of different projects.
Okay.
But this one was a pretty short ramp. I mean, we just started talking about it late last year, and we finally got the green light to actually do it back in March, I think, somewhere like that. March or April.
Okay.
But yeah, pretty quick for one of these books.
That's great. Well, and I think Oeming is a guy that plays well in the Hellboy universe because he, especially with his current style and stuff, can evoke a Mignola style, but still absolutely be Mike Oeming, which I think is great. And also as a plug for people, I was going to say it at the end of the show, but while we're talking about Hellboy and the BPRD, Wednesday, I'm going to have Jimmy DeMonakis on to talk about the Mignola documentary that he and his co-director made. And it's so, I mean, Chris, I do so many shows. Franco is like, hey, man, you ought to have Mignola on, or Jimmy on to talk about the Mignola documentary. And I'm like, yeah, I wonder why the guy didn't bother me when he was doing the Kickstarter. We did do a show when he was doing the Kickstarter.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and I'm like, because, I mean, as soon as he said, because I don't know if his co-director is joining him or not, but he's like, he mentioned him, and I'm like, oh, yeah, we did do it.
Yeah.
Okay. It was like 1,000.
It was a few years ago.
Yeah,
I mean, that launched pre-pandemic. I mean,
right.
Yeah. So
all right, thank you. Now I feel better because honestly, man, I'm going to be 60 in December, and it's like he's slipping. He better start doing Prevagen because he's going to need it.
Here's the thing. And this is completely parenthetical. So I'm 54. I just saw a comment from somebody who just turned 40, and all of us have lost the last 4 years. Like our ability to keep track of the past.
Absolutely, 100%.
It's a no. I saw somebody. Corey Bing said online yesterday, like I turned 40 and this is what happens. I'm like, no, I think this is just all of us just are completely contextless.
I do agree with that COVID does play a big part of like when things happen. But no, I'll even confess that.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's honestly, I relate to Carl Reiner, who used to say, "Oh, it's there. It's just I need a minute." And he goes, "My brain is buffering like our computers," and it's true. And then eventually, I get what I need. Hey, here's a good friend joining us, Cal Fegley. And Cal, just kind of again, I'm going to low tech your statement. I'm not going to put it up on the screen. Respect to all the other cool stuff. My favorite Roberson stories are the originals like iZombie, Edison Rex, and Sovereign. But I also get the impression that it's never been harder for anyone to sell an original series than right now. How are you feeling about that in your corner of work?
Yeah. Well, Kyle's not wrong. To be fair, I haven't tried as much the last few years because being in this unique position. So to answer the question, I know for a fact it's easier to sell, for example, the Dark Horse. Get Dark Horse on board with a new project if it's tied to some existing property or franchise that they already have a track record for.
Sure.
But like in my situation, I'm in a position where if I have an idea for a story, if I can figure out how I could fit it into Hellboy's world, if I can figure out a way to make it be from the world of Hellboy, I'll get a page rate. I'll be able to work with pretty much any artist I want to work with, and they'll get their page rate, and readers will pick it up and try it out. Like it might not be a bestseller, but it will be solid. There will be enough of an interest that it's going to show up and people are going to buy it. There have been books I've done. To give an example, I had a yearning to do an Agatha Christie style locked room supernatural mystery, murder mystery.
Sure.
And I wanted to have like a middle-aged lady like be the main character, and I wanted to do the whole thing. I was reading a lot of Miss Marple. And if I had tried to sell that as just my original thing, I mean, I wouldn't have gotten a page rate up front for it. And that would have been a really tough sell to get stores on board and to get readers on board. But I hit upon a way to do it in the world of Hellboy. And even though Hellboy is not in it, there's no other elements that were established aside from some supporting characters that Mike and I had introduced in Witchfinder. But having decided to set it there. Yeah, I got to work with Layla Del Duca, who's a fantastic artist. Readers bought it. It came out in a hardcover edition, and I'm still signing copies of it at cons now.
Smart.
So, but I'm kind of like Panda. I've specialized a little bit too much. I'm really good at eating bamboo, and I really need to have a more diverse diet, because I really there's only so many slots in the Hellboy schedule that I could fill.
Sure.
So currently what I'm doing is on the side, I'm working on like some personal prose projects. You know, that's where I'm directing my energy. I'll figure out what to do with them when I'm done.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
when they're ready, obviously. When they're ready, obviously, I'll want to talk to you. So, yeah, absolutely.
I'd be happy to talk about them.
But I do kind of love, and it does seem like the Hellboy BPRD universe is more like open to showing new characters in a way that I think it's a lot harder for DC and Marvel. I mean, always you're going to need to. I mean, I always say it, and especially when Marvel was legacy heavy, like 10, 12 years ago, it's like, I don't mind when Riri Williams is introduced in Iron Man, as long as Tony's still there. And I mean that. So, but I really do think more so, like you said, with Witchfinder and some of the other great BPRD concepts that have come because it has this the Hellboy stories established, that it really is this long-standing universe, and organizations like the BPRD do go back decades, and it's great. I right now I'm blanking on the robot that was like during World War II.
Oh, Sledgehammer.
Thank you. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, anytime one of you guys tell me about a new thing like that, and it's like, and here's how we're slotting it into BPRD, and it's like, well, it makes perfect sense.
Well, and I think it's largely a testament to Mike Mignola and the world that he created, and his willingness to collaborate with letting, whether it's John Arcudi or Chris Golden or me or other people come in, Tom Snigowski come in and add to it. But because it's still a relatively small stable of people, it stays coherent. There's never had to be any kind of reboots or continuity corrections. There are occasionally errors creep in. Never from me.
Attaboy.
But I'll find them occasionally. And what's nice is I can do little no prize answers. I can fix them as I go. So, for example, there was a Witchfinder story that if you worked out the timeline, there was a John Severin drawn Western that John Arcudi had written, that established that Sir Edward Grey had gone to chase some guy, right? But then that guy had already was established elsewhere as having been alive later. We saw that guy who died in the Old West was alive later in London. I gave him a twin brother. I was like, nope, that wasn't that guy. That was that guy's identical twin. No problem. He'd have the same last name and he looks the same. So
hilarious.
Fixed.
Very funny.
Yeah. But no, you're right. It's a very flexible, it's a big canvas that can support a whole lot of different tones. And Mike always encourages us to do our each of us kind of has our little corner of it, and they're not really hardly defined borders. So when we start bumping up against each other, we'll just kind of, I'll get an email from Chris Golden like, hey, does this work? Or is there anything that you're doing that's going to interfere with this over here? And I'll go check a script and I'll be like, nope. And I don't want to spoil anything because this hasn't been drawn yet. But he asked me about whether one particular character would still be alive at this point in history, right? And I was like, aha. Yes, that character will be alive, but they won't have all their limbs because of X, Y, and Z. This thing is going to happen.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's a script for a thing that is not even yet on the schedule. That kind of fell off the schedule ages ago. But now, because I was lucky enough to remember I'd done that, then that character is going to show up sans that limb.
Wow.
In another story that Chris Golden is writing. And then eventually we'll get to see what happened.
That's great, man. No, that's true. And again, this is why BPRD and Hellboy endure, and it's you got talented people that are making the books, and again, like you said, they're a close knit group that talk to each other, and yeah, that's great. Because really, I mean, it's kind of a rarity. I mean, everyone loves the success of Hellboy and the movies that have come from it and stuff like that, but it is kind of cool that the BPRD just kind of chugs along, and again, that universe allows these kind of fresh ideas along with still being familiar.
Yeah, it's and again, like there are certainly instances where I was like, I would think I have an idea that doesn't quite fit within that world. Those I do have, those aren't sold. I haven't found homes for those yet. But the stuff that does fit, yeah, we get to do all kinds of cool stuff. And like, a lot of it will be like, oh, what if we did this particular genre or subgenre we haven't played with before? And it'll be a character that, like, there's one I can't mention because it hasn't gone through contracts yet. But it was a character that Mignola introduced, used briefly, and then was done with, but thought had more potential. And so we're developing that as a different thing. So.
Okay. You started first as a novelist before you got into comics, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Has there been, I was going to ask, do you feel that you have taken your comic readers community, gotten them to read the novels, vice versa? They are really two different worlds?
I haven't really done much in prose since working in comics. Like I've done a couple of things here and there. But like a couple of small press books and then some franchise work. But nothing that I necessarily felt was like, there's a cat over there. You might.
Oh yeah, I heard it. That's good. Dude, when the pets walk past the camera or make a sound, I'm very happy. Don't worry about it.
Yep. But no, I very much I felt like my novel career kind of wrapped up as my comic career was taking off. And then for the first few years I was working in comics, I really didn't have room in my schedule to do anymore. It was a different landscape, 15, 16 years ago than it is now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But just as a person, a warm body showing up, able to turn out scripts, I got more work than I could do for those first few years. But now it's more that like, well, this is a cool idea, and if I worked really hard and gave up a lot, I might be able to get like 4 issues of a comic out in the world. Or I could just write it as a book and then figure out what to do with it after that. And it's an idea that I've been playing around with for a long time, and I don't really want to just do 4 issues and then give up on it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Absolutely, it does.
Yeah.
Are doors open at DC and Marvel for you to pitch? Do you have godfathers over there or godmothers that
Well, it's been long enough that no one that I knew when I was there is still there.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Hey, welcome to. Hey, that's my radio career right now. So I feel you, buddy.
They have all moved on. And I'm friendly with some folks. But even there, I mean, people still come and go.
Sure.
So,
absolutely.
No, I mean, I am not averse to it. It hasn't happened. Yeah. So
and I mean, and I wanted to get into this anyway because of the legacy of iZombie that you and Mike Allred created, became a very successful CW television show. And, does that have a credential for you? I know Rob, who was the showrunner again?
Rob Thomas.
Rob Thomas. Yeah, Rob Thomas. I mean, obviously Rob Thomas can, hey, how you doing? I made this thing, and guess what? Everybody wants, the 20-something audience. Well, I clicked with that. Maybe you want to talk to me. Yeah, but again, I know that, the book, I mean, it's really a great book. I hope that it's still in print where you guys are getting royalties. Good to hear. Very good.
Well, more than that, like they released the hardcover omnibus. The show was still on the air, I think, when the omnibus first came out.
I remember.
And then it sold out, and then they re-released it this past year. There was a new, now under the Black Label imprint, because there's no more Vertigo.
Yeah, makes sense. Sure.
But no, so that's still in print. So yeah, and we get, I think that without even checking the numbers, I could say with confidence we've made more from the royalties of sales since the show off
Sure.
of the books than we did the whole time the book was coming out. Yeah,
I understand. Yeah. No, that makes sense. And again, that's great. That's the great boomerang of comics where, because I have so many of my friends who have kids that have like really gotten into genre fiction in general. And, yeah, well, God, all right, the movie's over or the TV's over. Is there anything else? And it's like, well, these are great.
Yeah.
And it's, and then it's the comics or whatever. I mean, I was giving it up to Lansing and Kelly for how, I'm a Star Trek uber nerd and attaboy. I'm glad to hear. I always wonder if, I don't want to get into it too much if they're not into Star Trek who I'm talking to, but they're killing it.
I've got the whole run on the shelf over there. Like it's
of all their volumes. That's great, man.
Yeah.
They're amazing. And even everybody else that's playing in the Star Trek world right now for IDW. And it's like, oh, thank God, these are good. Buffy season 8, what Meltzer did, and Brian Hill, what he did with Angel, and people like Karina Becco and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean that's and man, again, when we were kids, comic tie-ins not that good usually, whatever. I mean, and no, they give a shit now, editorial and the licensor, I believe.
I grew up on the Gold Key Star Trek stuff,
Yep.
and it had its charms.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, not very good.
Dave Gibbons, I just replayed on my audio podcast. I replayed a conversation we had when his autobiography came out, and I asked him, had he ever, thought about or did DC want him to maybe do Star Trek comics back in the 80s and stuff? And he really described that Italian artist that did the Gold Key books, and he goes, "Well, I'd probably do it the way he did it." Where you'd focus on one face and everybody, all the other crew are in silhouette, or you have a lot of long shots of the Enterprise in space. That's simple to draw. And he really did just map out exactly how the guy was doing the Gold Key comics. And again, that poor guy was in another country. I don't know if Star Trek was running.
I don't think he'd ever seen it.
That's what I'm saying. Yes. No. And a lot of those great painted covers, completely different style than the TV show. But they're just like every Gold Key cover back then are just gorgeous. Yeah. So, Tim Seeley's brother Steve and I are always like diving through dollar bins or $2 bins these days and looking for Gold Key Star Trek comics because they're hilarious, man.
A couple of years I went on a huge Star Trek kick when the pandemic started, and I have since rewatched all of it. Caveat: I can't finish Voyager. There's seasons of Voyager I haven't finished.
Okay.
Everything else I've watched at least once or more than once. But around the time I laid hands on somebody, it was before IDW had the license for Star Trek. Somebody managed to negotiate the rights to do a DVD ROM of digital scans of all of the Star Trek licensed comics to date. And it was licensed. It was a legit deal. But it was all of it. It was all the Gold Key stuff, but all the DC stuff and Marvel and Wildstorm, and all of it. And there's some gems in there. I mean, there's some good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's that Adam Hughes, I want to say, drew it, and I it might have been Byrne who wrote it, where it's like a sequel to Star Trek 4.
I think you're right.
But also,
something like,
but it's a flashback, and I mean, in the modern day. Shatner, Kirk is hanging out with Jillian, the oceanographer, and they're on a ship, but then he's remembering original series memories of this. I remember
if that was one of the Peter David ones.
Might have been. And, Peter, my God, I've only had one face-to-face with Peter at a convention, and I'm like, listen, the comics are great. They speak for themselves. You're the best original Star Trek writer. And listen, I love Mike Friedman. Michael Jan Friedman is a fantastic Star Trek writer as well. And a lot of other people that I've had on the show over the years, I think are great. But yeah, Pete's the GOAT when it comes to Star Trek novels, man.
I might have to give the nod to Diane Duane myself.
Diane Duane's great. Duane's great.
Wounded Sky was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. Like that.
One of my favorites still, and I even I don't know how I lost the paperback, but I ended up buying it again, both as a hard paperback and also a digital copy. Doctor's Orders.
Oh yeah.
And the alien slips him into another direction, and all of a sudden they can't find the captain. And before he left, McCoy's like, man, it must be sweet, man. You just sit in that nice comfy chair and do this, do that. And Kirk's like, oh, really? Well, guess what? Direct order, Commander McCoy. You're in charge. And you don't get to leave until I relieve you. And so he sits down, and then Kirk's missing. And it's great because Spock is like, he's like, Spock, you got to take over. He's like, well, it was a direct order. I really can't, and it was great. And he, at one point, even, it's a great joke. McCoy's like, well, what if I have to go to the bathroom? And Spock thinks for a moment, and he's like, well, that would be okay, but the captain would have said, you should have taken care of that before you sat in the chair. And it's this great. I mean, I could see it being an original series episode. And all of a sudden, the Klingons show up, and this is hostile Klingons. And McCoy has to figure out how to do a battle and all these other things. And it's great. It's like, way to go, Doc. I'm like, you're a good captain. That's fantastic. So, yeah, it's a Diane Duane story, man. No, I love that shit. You got to write a Star Trek novel, man.
I did.
You wrote a Star Trek novel?
Yeah.
Holy fuck. Which one? Talk to me.
It was in the tail end of, Pocket wasn't still doing their basically do a one a month kind of thing.
Yeah.
They had it was around 2007, 2008. They had a line called Myriad Universes, where what they did was, playing off of Myriad Universes, they had a bunch of what if stories. And so they brought on a bunch of different writers to do their long novellas, short novels, and then they collected them as an omnibus. So they put 3 of those together. And I did one that's largely, the plot's pretty similar in broad strokes to the first season of Picard, in that it's about Soong type androids, and there's some Romulan stuff going on, and there's a whole planet of Soong type androids somewhere, and stuff happens.
My God, man, awesome. I gotta dig this up, man. What the hell? You gotta tell me which the title of the omnibus, and I'll totally buy it. Are you kidding? Jesus.
Hang on, I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to look at my phone.
No, it's all good, man. And while you're looking, folks, honestly, you know how rabid of a Star Trek fan I am, and truly, in these times when you're waiting for the next series to drop or whatever, thank God there are literally hundreds of Star Trek novels that they've been making since the 70s. And I constantly will buy another set that I never got to. And
okay.
Talk to me.
I have the answer. It's called Echoes, Star Trek Myriad Universes, Echoes and Refractions.
Okay.
It's me, Keith R. DeCandido.
Another good one.
And who else is in this book? There's a third person in this book as well.
Echoes and Reflections
is
the subtitle. Okay. I'm excited.
Looks like Jeff Trowbridge did the third one.
Okay. Keith's great too, man. And he came up with the Starfleet Corps of Engineers, so he's got my undying respect.
Yeah, so it was mostly they had to rein me in a little bit because I went a little bit too overboard. But I was able to fulfill all, because I had for years wanted to address the Cedo Jaxa situation with Star Trek Next Generation. She gets in the episode Lower Decks. She's the young Bajoran officer. She gets sent off on a secret mission with Worf and doesn't come back.
Yep, well, the original Lower Decks idea. Yeah.
And I was like, well, that character is too good to just be killed off camera. There's more to that story. So I was able to bring her back. And because I changed the timeline around, I was able to have Wesley Crusher as a full lieutenant on the ship by this point. All that kind of stuff.
Fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
I wrote an X-Men prose novel for Pocket right around that time. Yeah.
Original story or based on one of the comics?
Original. Yeah.
Oh, that's great, man. Truly, I try to keep an eye open on a lot of the licensed paperback novels, and especially when they are original stories, but even in the adaptations as well. And I've talked to Stuart Moore and Greg Pak when they've adapted the stuff that they've worked on and stuff. All right, another question from Shipping Lover regarding Batwheels, and again, the problem, kid, is because she's like, they're like, will Batwheels have more heroes than villains? I've already made Ice, Fire, and Princess Amethyst in my own Batwheel styles, and hoping they'll be on the show in the future. Well, again, unfortunately, as Chris was saying earlier, right now, the second season's done, and no plans right now for season 3, as far as we know.
So far as
we know, yeah. So, no, you're gonna have to direct your questions to Max, I believe, and see what they do. Hey, I'm even glad that it's actually running on Max. Not that it would be bad if it ran on an Amazon or a Netflix or whatever, but man, it isn't it interesting, Chris? And I in terms of like what they will let and not, Max isn't the only people that do this, but isn't it interesting when you'd think Batman Cape Crusader, well, that's a no brainer for Max and HBO to run, and thank God it's had the yes, as in Max HBO. That's right, shipping. You got it. I'll answer your question. But yeah, it's weird. I mean, I'm thrilled that Cape Crusader did as well as it did on Amazon, but it's like, man, I think it would have been a no-brainer, especially with the Penguin TV show going on now as well, because it is, it's safe, but it is an edgy animated Batman series for what it is.
Well, I don't pretend to know the reasoning behind those kinds of decisions.
Sure.
As with Paramount and Star Trek, there was periodically the original cast films will disappear from Paramount Plus and they'll go somewhere else for a while, and you'll have to go somewhere else to watch those films.
Yeah.
And then they come back and then it's all under one roof again. But Prodigy is over on Netflix now, not Paramount Plus. The decision not to have the new Bruce Timm Batman show on the Warner streaming service bewildered me, but that's above my pay grade.
Glad it found a home. Glad we're getting a season 2 at the very least of that.
Yeah.
Happy for Ed and everybody that wrote on it.
So Cape Crusader, Star Trek Prodigy, and I feel like there's another one recently where these shows that lost the home where they were supposed to be, and then in the 11th hour found another streaming service to be on. I'm as a viewer, I'm overjoyed that like those shows found a home because I want to watch it.
Absolutely. Well, for old shows, and it's driving me nuts because I was really enjoying watching Odd Couple reruns on Paramount Plus, and I don't know where it is right now as far as streaming, but it's not on Paramount. And it bums me out, man.
I feel like the streaming services are constantly trying to gaslight me because I will be in the middle of watching something and then it's gone. It's not there anymore. And then it's not like you get any kind of notification. Unless you're paying really close attention, it's just vanished. It's not there anymore. And even so, then there's things where like I don't even really want to watch it that badly, but I know I can watch it. For instance, I had the Mark Singer Beastmaster film lingering in the corner of my vision every time I went to Amazon Prime.
Sure.
For 6 months. And it wasn't on my watch list, but I was like, I think maybe. I've watched it probably 100 times on cable when I was a kid. I know it's not good, but
it's curious. Fun. No. It's fun,
now it's gone.
Man.
It's not there anymore. It disappeared so quickly that the Apple TV app still thinks it's on Amazon Prime, even though it's not on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's the worst tease too, where you you look it up, you Google it or something, and it's like, oh yeah, don't worry, it's here, and it's like, no, it's not. I'm so with you. Did you watch last summer? Not this past summer, but 23. There was that great mini series of a documentary about how 1982 was such a great geek year for all the movies that came out and stuff. And it's Mark Altman, the guy who made Free Enterprise, and he does the Inglorious Treksperts podcast and everything. It's terrific. And he really got a lot of great talking heads. And it's everything you'd expect. I mean, but you forget some of it was Star Trek 2, and it was Poltergeist, and it was Rocky 3, I think. Just all these like movies. And then things like RoboForce or I can't think of the name. The Barry Botswick movie.
Megaforce?
Megaforce. Thank you, my man. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, stuff like that. Or so yeah, it's really that's exactly the same kind of movie like Mark Singer and Beastmaster and stuff. They're cheese, but they're fun.
Yeah.
And thank God they had studios like New Horizons and whatever back in the day that'd be willing to make those things, Yeah. It was that hangover of the Corman effect. Well, and that's why I love Lloyd Kaufman and that he's still cranking out what he cranks out and everything. So
it's definitely you kind of get this impression because I turned 12 that year, right? I was
sure.
born in 1970. So looking back, there's this sense of like, well, maybe it's just rose-colored spectacles because I'm remembering this kind of golden age of my childhood. And I thought everything was new and exciting, and there was so much of it thick on the ground. And you go back and you look, and you're like, "Oh no, this was fantastic!" And also, just like there's a kind of spillover effect if you look at the quality of just the kind of mainstream American superhero comics those few years, which
Sure.
is unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. You know, a couple of the 70s ones that I want to say Movieplex on or Streamplex. It's what used to basically be like Encore that is still on Xfinity cable. They run from the 70s, The Land That Time Forgot, and another one. And they're very for people who don't know, they're very Edgar Rice Burroughs-esque in terms of like the Lost World, those kind of movies.
Oh yeah.
And it has everybody
Troy
knows from the
McClure.
Simpsons. I was going to say exactly, man, exactly. And it's and as you and I know, it's the real Doug McClure, who Troy McClure is based on.
Yep.
And it's great. Or Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son, is in a couple of them as well.
Well,
and
hell,
they're
one of
fun.
those is written by Michael Moorcock. The script to one of those things is by Michael Moorcock.
This is what I'm saying, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or Fire and Ice, the Frazetta animated movie,
which is still in my Amazon Prime queue.
Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway.
Oh, really?
Yep, absolutely.
Because it's it's Frazetta and Bakshi, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I luckily I was able to get Bakshi on Word Balloon.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, and about 10 or 12 years ago or something. Yeah, it was good. Well, like you were saying too about stuff that disappears. That Monsieur Spade, the Sam Spade French, and it's like 10 years after the Maltese Falcon with Clive Owen and everything. I started watching it on AMC. I forgot to record a couple episodes. It went away.
Oh, it went away already?
Well, but now it's on Netflix. So if you have Netflix, you can get it.
Okay.
And it's only 6 episodes. It's great. I keep talking about it and telling friends who are looking for something new to watch. It's good. And again, this is just the weird world we're in now, where if it's not a big tent movie, it's probably going to be an original streamer. I even saw that Clooney and Brad Pitt have a new Apple movie right now. I haven't seen it yet, but one that I did watch from last year finally was Quiz Lady with Awkwafina and Sandra Oh.
I haven't seen it yet, but it's on my
funny. Really funny. And I recommended it to a friend, and he just called me today, and he's like, "You were right." And I'm like, "Yeah," and it's great because really Awkwafina has really grown on me over the years. But Sandra Oh, I mean, I've been a fan ever since she was on Arliss with Robert Wool back in the 90s, and she's great.
She was in what's it called, Double Happiness. She was in an indie Canadian film about
I haven't seen
it. Yeah. She was the main character. I think it was before Arliss, but I can't swear. But it was right around there. Early 90s.
Oh wow. Because I've been because of the Batman 35th anniversary of the '89 Batman, I reposted my Robert Wola interview because he had great stories about Batman '89, and I'm like, and of course we talked about Arliss, and I'm like, Arliss was good. I'm gonna watch some episodes. So I've been watching that on Max, and I'm glad it's still there because it's funny as hell. What are you watching these days?
I feel like I just finished a project. What did I finish? I think I'm about to start the new season of Slow Horses. That's my next thing.
Great show.
I wait until I've got enough where I can watch them back to back for a few days. And I think I've timed it just right so that if I take a break for Agatha All Along on Wednesday, it'll just time out that I'll be able to catch up with the last episodes next week.
How is that, Chris? I watched the first 15 minutes. I got busy doing stuff, and I'm like, well, if I'm not paying attention, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
How is it?
I would not judge it based on the first part of the first episode. I think they released 2 episodes together for a reason.
Yes.
I feel like.
Yes.
I am loving it. I mean, I'm somebody who I really enjoyed WandaVision. So your mileage may vary. But I feel like without spoiling too much, if you get the conceit of what's happening in the first 15 minutes of the first episode, that wraps up by the end of the first episode, and then we're just in the story. Like they get you out of the meta narrative of you're trapped in another genre.
I see.
Pretty quick.
Because and I will say, I love Kathryn Hahn, and I always have, and whether it's a dramatic role or a comedy role, she's funny as hell in We're the Millers, and she's great on that HBO show that ended. And who the name escapes me right now, but she was like the teacher that was having the affair with the kid and everything. I know she's great. So I'm rooting for her. Although I will confess that, hey, we're doing an Agatha series. And I'm like, Why? Because I thought she was a great character in WandaVision, but to me, she's still the even though she's kind of different, she's still the Fantastic Four's babysitter. And it's like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
what are we doing?
So, yeah, as far as being the far from the white-haired bun nanny, yeah, she's very much not that character. But they very quickly in the second episode start to, and it's an ensemble show. Like it takes to the second episode to meet the rest of the ensemble, and I may be wrong, but I know that a few of them are definitely adaptations of existing Marvel characters.
That was my assumption. Yeah,
and then I think some of the others are just original to the show.
Sure.
But
and it's it's witches and it's Halloween season, so sure, why not? Keep going.
And there's a full-on musical number in the second episode, but done in such a way that, like, yeah, you have to do that. Like, that makes sense.
Okay, all right.
And one of the new characters that we've met is Patti LuPone. So Patti LuPone.
Oh, I love Patti LuPone. I always love Patti. Good
it's
Lord.
all those characters together in the coven, and then it's at least based on the first 3 episodes, it feels like they're swinging for the fences, because like they're on this kind of magical quest, and they very quickly embark into this supernatural realm on this magical quest, and each of the trials they face, it looks like it's going to be a pretty much completely different seeming environment. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know how crazy it's going to get, but based on the first 3 episodes, I'm freaking loving it so far.
All right, good to hear. I do what you do, and I can't really out flat out binge. I'm like 2 behind purposefully on Only Murders in the Building from Hulu. Okay. And I love it. I've loved every season. And I also am a little behind on Tulsa King, the Stallone Paramount thing. And I love that show. I think that's a great show.
Did you see The After Party on Amazon TV?
No, talk to me.
I think it was on Amazon, Apple TV, I think. Apple TV?
Okay.
I'm 90% sure it's an Apple TV show.
Okay, I got Apple. Yeah.
It's it's a murder mystery where all the characters in the first season are like adults attending their 20-year high school reunion. And the guy who became the big celebrity pop star gets killed in the first episode. And everybody that's at his house for the after party after the reunion is the suspects. And then every episode, it's kind of this Rashomon thing where you get each character's account of what happened that night.
Okay.
And every episode is in a completely different style. Like, it's a different genre of show.
Ooh.
So one might be like a gritty drama. One is a romantic comedy. One is a flat out musical.
Wow.
And then, but the show itself is a comedy, right? So then the one character that we know didn't do it and the cop who's there investigating it are kind of 2 viewpoint characters that we're kind of following as they go through. And then they did a second season with those 2 characters at a wedding where there's a murder. And it's the same basic setup where the suspects, as we're investigating the plot, tell their stories, and one of them is in a Wes Anderson film, and one of them is in like a Western or whatever. Like, it's very satisfying as a fair play mystery and as a comedy, but also like getting to see all those characters play wildly different types. Yeah.
That sounds fun. See, this is, again, Chris, this is why I love my format, and that, listen, I want to talk about the new stuff you're doing, and of course play the greatest hits, but no,
sure.
We're all genre fiction freaks. We're all looking for new shows to watch, and there's such a glut. I mean, on the one hand, I really feel for all my screenwriter friends that are telling me how tough the environment is, even a year and change since the strikes and everything, and that unless you've got like a real package with a bunch of A-list actors, good luck trying to sell your original idea. Yep. So no, but also by the same token, there's so much stuff already out there that you can't watch everything. So it's great. I know. I always think Sony is the smartest of the studios, not having a streamer and just making Slow Horses and the other various shows that they make, that they drop at all the other, streaming networks and stuff. Yeah. And it's like, they're making the money. I mean, I on the one hand, I understand why Paramount rents out the Star Trek movies to HBO Max or wherever. But by the same token, like you said, it's like, well, I'm subscribing to the fucking channel. The least you could do is play what I came for. Did you go ahead?
Well, I was just going to say it wouldn't break my heart if a number of these studios decided to move away from having their own streaming services and just started putting their stuff elsewhere. I mean,
there's too many.
Yeah.
No, I don't have Peacock right now, and I'm like, I'll get Peacock eventually when the new Battlestar Galactica happens, and then they pull the plug on the new Battlestar Galactica.
I really enjoyed Poker Face.
I hear nothing but great things about Poker Face. I didn't get to it yet. I hear the Ted Seth MacFarlane show is fantastic.
Oh, I haven't watched that one yet. Yeah.
And I saw the first episode. My buddy had Peacock with commercials, and they only gave him the first episode. And it's if you need the rest, you need pre. It's like, man, you're getting money from this person. Don't get. I'm Buddy Young now, the Billy Crystal put down comment. Don't get me started. But yeah, did you speaking of musical episodes? I really liked the first season of Strange New Worlds, and I've been rooting for Strange New Worlds. I got to tell you, of the 10 episodes we got in season 2, I really there were 3 that I liked. Otherwise, I liked the crossover. I hated the musical. I'm like, and the reason why I hated the musical is, I'm like, you haven't been around long enough for that kind of show. You got to earn it. Like Buffy waited till like season 6, to do their musical, and I forget what season Xena did their musical and stuff. But it's like, and I know it's a different world now. And also, I mean, I'm rooting. I hope I'll like more episodes in season 3 because I really like this cast. And in fact, I interviewed Ethan Peck and Celia Rose Gooding, Spock and Uhura, at Terrificon at the convention. And I held my tongue. I'm like, all right, this is a love fest for the show. I'm not going to shit in the punch bowl. Come on, nobody wants that. So I accented the positive, accentuate the positive, as the song goes. But yeah, I'm like, and again, just my own feelings about it. And then I hear that this season coming up 3 is going to be gimmicky as well, and it's like, well, I hope there's some Star Trek in my Star Trek. And again, as a guy who's written Star Trek yourself, I understand, dude. I'm so excited to read this book. I'm serious.
Thanks.
The novella, yeah, man. No, that's so great. Well, in the meantime, people can watch on Max your episode of Batwheels. It's season 2, episode 16.
Yes.
And the title of it for people who,
Night Bike's Noisy Night.
It's about and you got Night Bike, you got Batgirl's Bike, and the Penguin.
Yeah.
It's a fun story. No, absolutely, man. And then in January, your new BPRD, and remind people again of the title of that.
I don't think we've said it yet. That's on me.
Okay, because I've seen the Dark Horse. I know it's on Dark Horse's solicit page.
In our conversation, we haven't said it yet. It's called Shadow of the Golden Crane.
Shadow of the Golden Crane.
Me and Michael Oming doing a 4-issue fun Hellboy story.
Absolutely. Coming our way January of 2025. Well, I hope we talk sooner than that and have another conversation. So obviously, the door's always open. And when you've got something new, please come back and talk. Or even if you want to bullshit, hey, when Lower Decks, the animated series starts up.
There you go.
So there you go.
I'm glad to.
Best to Danny. I hope everything's going good. And and also Allison, of course. And yeah, man. No, great talking to you. And thanks for coming on tonight.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, man.
As always, hang out, man. We'll bullshit for a minute.
Okay.
For people watching and listening, next episode is going to be Michael Kingston. And I can't believe I did this. So if you're turned off by politics, Word Balloon is going to provide an alternative. But poor Michael was going to come on last Tuesday. And I forgot that's when I did my Alex Ross documentary episode. And I already had that scheduled. So I'm like, Michael, please wait a week. And then it was like, the debate is Tuesday night. And of course, I want to watch the debate because not since the first Ali Frazier fight have I been anticipating such a matchup, Tim Walz and JD Vance. I think it's going to be hilarious. But Michael and I are going to talk about his fantastic comics. And if you're a wrestling fan and a comic book fan, you likely already know. But he does Headlock Comics, and they are really, really great. He is very much immersed in the wrestling culture. He's friends with guys like Jerry Lawler and other wrestlers as well. So if you're really looking for a great, authentic wrestling comic, we'll talk with Mike. He goes to a lot of shows and tables, but also his website, and we'll get you educated on Mike's wonderful books. And then Friday or Wednesday, like I said, I'm talking to Jimmy DeMonakis about the Hellboy documentary that he made about Mike Mignola. And Thursday afternoon, to accommodate a British guest, probably mid-afternoon, I'll be talking to Philip Bond, Shelley Bond, Will Potter, about their Geezer series of graphic novels. And the latest edition, they just dropped a Kickstarter for that. So that'll be Thursday's show. And a lot more as we roll in October. So I hope you'll join me then. Until next time, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.